Thank you, Mr. Shrikant, for your presentation on risks and how to integrate these risks into more than only the four corners of top management. Looking forward to discuss this in more detail. I would like to firstly take the opportunity to thank all panelists for their very interesting and comprehensive presentations. Thank you very much for providing us your insights and view on developments of your ports, COVID-19, and also obviously Mr. Shrikant on the risk perspective and Ms. Blegsmith-Jana on the developments in the cable sector. I would now like to take the opportunity to answer some of the questions asked digitally. I will focus on the questions initially which are more generic in content, and then I will highlight some of them which are more specific. One of the questions I see is to all panelists, and maybe I can start by asking this question to Mr. Marco Nielsen. What is the future of ultra-large container ships up to 24,000 TEU in case production comes back to Western countries? Maybe I would like to add to that, maybe it goes back to other countries as well. Would appreciate your view on this, Marco.
Yes, I think we will see probably less centralization of production in China. It will go more into regions. I do agree on that. But I don't think it's slightly different than in the airline industry. I don't think that the super ships will just disappear. I think there will still be cargo moved between Asia and Europe and then on the big trade lane. So I think what we probably will see is that no bigger ships will be built. I can't see now, Hyundai just came out with a 24,000. I don't see that somebody now thinks of how can we build a 30,000 TEU vessel. I do not see that, but I also don't see that these ships will be thrown away. I think, and Ramesh mentioned it a little bit around hub and spoke. So I think it will be probably even more concentration of utilizing these vessels, concentration in hubs, and potentially also concentration in shipping lines, right? So it's also not clear that everybody will survive the next 18 months or 24 months. So, and with a more concentration, the likelihood is also bigger to fill up these ships. So in short, they will remain. They will continue to sail, because when you utilize them, they make sense. But I don't think we will see in the midterm larger vessels coming on the market.
Okay, Marco, thank you very much for your question. We have a related question, which I would like to ask to Rio, Mr. Lasse, especially since Indonesia is such a vastly growing industrial hub. The question is, what is the opinion of the learned panel members on remodeling of global supply chains and the new MFG? I assume it refers to manufacturing destinations with countries looking inwards. Maybe a bit more generic, Mr. Lasse, Rio, what is your view, and especially maybe considering Indonesia on changing the supply chain routes?
Yeah, so, sorry. Yeah, I understand that now Indonesia, we have a very strong growth in terms of expanding our capacity in manufacturing. Yeah, and also our government give a lot of us stimulus for the industrial, for the investors to come here and do some investment in manufacturing. And I believe this is a very strong case that will happen in coming years in Indonesia, and supported by the development of the transportation related with it that support the manufacturing as a gateway, so that we can have an increased export to the other countries, yeah, and also encouraging some of the important materials as a spare part for the manufacturing that also come through our port. So yeah, in general, I still believe that this will happen. We will become stronger in terms of the manufacturing. The industries will develop in the coming years. Yeah, I hope that answers.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer. Maybe another question which is asked to P2P, but I think is a bit more generic, because I understand IPC as well as South Asia Gateway Terminals as well as PTP are looking at new revenue models. Are you considering keeping these new, are you considering expanding your business with offers for strategic stock opportunities in the port area? Is this a profitable business, or would you rather go back to classical operations? This is a question asked. Maybe we can put it a bit wider and to understand whether the revenue models you have implemented are something you look forward to keep implemented in the long run as well. Maybe I can ask this question to Mr. Romesh David.
Yes, I think anything to do with pure storage is suboptimal. Ultimately, a terminal storage on the terminal is the most precious commodity that a terminal has, and you don't want boxes or cargo sitting here just to collect rent. So, as a long-term strategy, no. Most certainly not, but there are some facilities, I mean, that have the capacity and then will naturally lend themselves to that. And other facilities, like if you look at Colombo, we're reasonably volume constrained, or capacity constrained normally, until of course we get the ECT going. So we wouldn't look to do this as a long-term business, and I don't think it'll remain a long-term business, because ultimately. Buyers don't want, or no one wants huge amounts of cargo in the supply chain, sitting in the supply chain. So these are one-off instances, I think, that are very cyclical, and that's not likely to remain a permanent source.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer. Then we have maybe a specific question which I would like to ask to Jana. How much data have you already collected with your new cable generation, and how many cranes have you installed it and tested it at the moment?
So the answer is relatively short, not enough. Because this model that we want to create interpreting the measured data requires a certain data volume, but we are beginning of the journey into the future. So at the moment, the answer is not enough, but we are trying to, and we depend actually on the users, to collect more and more. For whatever reason, very advanced at this time is Australia. They have the highest number, far highest number of installation of intelligent monitoring systems, not only in the ports container handling, also in the bulk iron ore sites, coal mine sites. So we have installations, some for trial, for example, Port of Singapore at the moment, and Pasir Panjang is doing a trial on this IQ monitoring system. We have installations in Europe and a few in America. So we are at the beginning of the journey. The number of equipment is difficult to say, but in kilometers, installed cable kilometers, I would say it's around about 80 to 100 kilometers installed IQ cables.
Okay. Thank you very much for your answer. I trust that this answers the question of the audience as well. There's a specific question to Mr. Shrikant from a risk perspective. Prolonged lockdown and uncertainty of COVID-19 handling in one country could actually make business owners to change their factory location to better ones. That relates to the supply chain question we had before. Can you give advice on how companies should mitigate on these risks?
That's an excellent question. I actually wanted to show the possibility of changed trade patterns as a strategic risk. But then I decided to drop it since I didn't want everything to be related to COVID-19. This is a classic strategic risk, which is also an opportunity. Mitigating that would include taking an educated guess about new trade flows, see which of these your port is geographically positioned to capitalize upon, and also whether your port is suited for these trade flows, which of these trade flows your port is suited for in terms of your ability to handle mainland vessels or feeder vessels or whatever, and thereafter doing work on the origin destination pairs of interest to you and marketing to both the origin and destination entities to see that the flows come your way. Now, that is a very general statement. As you will all realize, there are so many other factors involved, and it is difficult to say unless the case is clear as to what exactly the mitigating measures should be. But this is one thing, and of course, you may have to upgrade your port to meet these new trade flows, if at all you are suitable for them. Otherwise, you may need to look at your tariffs, and you would definitely need to look at your turnaround. So these could be some mitigating measures spearheaded by the marketing effort.
Okay, thank you very much for your clear answer. Another question, people are asking for tips, and I do wish to highlight one news fact that came to me yesterday, that the Port of Rotterdam is actually facing a 30% decrease of volumes in Q2. So, which relates to this question, do you have any tips for specialized ports such as bulk, ro-ro, passenger ports to survive in this epidemic, as they do not have the options to quickly change their main cargo, of course? So, any tips? Because if I look at the numbers that have been provided by the panelists, either working for port or terminal, we can see that the drop is 20%, 5%, or in that order. Any tips would be appreciated, I guess. So maybe a question for Marco?
There's probably nothing like the magic wand, right? I mean, if you want to talk to an industry which is really in limbo, is of course cruise terminals, right? Because they have a relative high investment and they are down to virtually zero. For them, it's a massive problem. But I think, I mean, there's two ways to do it, right? One thing is to look at the revenue, and if the revenue doesn't work out the way you want, you need to look at your cost picture. And I think it sounds classical, but I think there's not much opportunities, right? It depends, of course, what equipment you have and which markets you are. But just in our asset-heavy industry, I think it's relatively difficult, I think, to swing around, right? I mean, we are such a full container terminal. It's not so easy for me to say, even I want to do ro-ro tomorrow. It's not like plug and play. There has to be things to be done to make it happen. So I think at the end, it has to do, in my opinion, it has to do a lot with cost discipline, and like lean, what we are doing, getting workforce engaged, getting flexible. I think untapped areas which you wouldn't have done under normal circumstances, and that's, I think, one of the opportunities of COVID, despite the digitization and drive, which we also do, is really that you have a large understanding of cost leadership, also from workforce and from stakeholders. So I think that's the opportunity actually to use the time to make the terminal fit for the future, to say, okay, how long can I breathe with these losses, but can I use the time to go forward when we come out of it? We will come out of this one way or the other, to say, I'm then more agile, more lean, that I can, let's say, in a market which with smaller revenues still can be a winner, because I have a different cost base on which I can operate on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the answer. I think we're almost heading to the end of this session. I would like to take the opportunity to, maybe it's more like a remark by my friend Steve Cameron about, and it was also mentioned by Mr. Romesh David, about the crew changes. I think everybody knows it is a big challenge, and a lot of people are still at sea. So maybe good to just highlight the fact that I think it's an important issue to mention, and to make sure that also these people find their way home, and to find a way with the industry, including the audience, to get these people home safely. Since we have only 3 minutes left, I think it is time to close this session. And also leave some time for Transport Events to give maybe some closing remarks. From my side, I would like to thank the distinguished panelists, the viewers, and everybody else, and obviously Transport Events, and especially AJ for asking me to join this panel. So a small applause from my end to everybody involved. Also for the sponsor, obviously Prismian Group, to make this this panel session possible. Thank you very much. I look forward maybe in the future to join one more time or more times with a webinar like this. Thank you from my side.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anthony, for joining us today and moderating the webinar. I would also like to thank Prismian Group for sponsoring the webinar today. Jana, thank you very much. I also like to take this opportunity to also thank our panelists, Marco, Jana, Romesh, Rio, and Srikant, for their time in preparing their insightful presentations during today's webinar. The presentations given today and a recording of this webinar will be available to all registered attendees on Monday next week. Thank you to all our viewers for your attendance. We hope this webinar has been valuable and informative and helps you develop some new businesses from what you have learned here today. Please join us next week on Thursday, 11th of June at 11 a.m. Central European Summer Time or 5 p.m. Hong Kong for the 8th Transport Events webinar entitled Current Challenges and Future Opportunities for Mediterranean Ports and Terminals. A must-attend webinar for anyone doing business with ports and terminals in the Mediterranean. So please register at your earliest convenience from Monday, as registrations will be limited. May I ask everyone to follow us at Transport Events on LinkedIn and visit our website www.transportevents.com for latest information on our market-leading annual events and webinars. You may contact me directly at ajay@transportevents.com for any further assistance, spelled AJAY@transportevents.com. I would also like to invite you to email me if you would like to have your company's latest full color logo and company details exclusively branded before, during, and after the webinar on June 11th, focusing on ports and terminals for the Mediterranean region. May I wish our valued moderator, our wonderful speakers, and our viewers everywhere in the world a goodbye for now, a good weekend, and looking forward together to better days ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good day to all of you.